Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Vet Chats, where we help veterans share their awesome stories and help make the veteran community a better place for all. I hope you stay tuned to hear how this generation is continuing their service. So today I want to talk about people pleasing, being a yes man, how this kind of habit that we had in the military doesn't need to become a habit in the civilian life. So first, let's talk about what the problem is. And this won't apply to everyone, but it's definitely something relevant to me. And I feel like every year I'm further away from the military, I kind of unlock a new issue or a new habit that I took from the military and carried with me. And lately it's been people pleasing. I know, like a lot of people, it probably started in childhood, but what exactly is people pleasing? It's a behavior where you feel like you have to go out of your way to make others happy, to either gain approval. It often involves putting others' needs above yours, which can impact your overall well-being and your mental health. We get this from all places. Like I mentioned, childhood, wanting to make either your parents happy. There's so much that can go into it. But oftentimes the military, the culture of the military amplifies that. It kind of makes you even more of a people pleaser if you were. And here's some of the reasons why. So first of all, your relationship with leaders has a lot riding on it. I mean, if you have a good relationship with your boss or whoever you're working for in the military, it can really depend on a lot of things, such as watch schedules. If you're cool with your chief or whoever you're working for, they could help you out and not put you on your watch schedule or help, get leave chits approved. It could even help with promotions. You're more likely to be recommended for promotions. Any current work position role, if you needed to get a certification, they could help you better. It's good to be on good terms with your boss in any job, but especially in the military, because they have even more of a say in your personal life, just because the military is more encompassing of your personal life than other jobs. So like all jobs, you want to keep your boss happy, especially in the military. It can turn into being the yes guy. You're saying yes to everything, any role. You're going to go for it because you want to stand out. You want to be the best person because you want to get those rewards. And often I felt like if you were good at your job, you were often rewarded with more responsibility, which led to, more stress and more pressure on you, which, led you to saying even yes to more things. So it's kind of that cycle that the military promotes. And sure, it pays off in some ways, but other ways it kind of makes you have more work. On top of people pleasing, you also wanted to be just liked by everyone because you were usually working with people who were your age. You had a lot of things similar, so you had more of a tendency to just want to be liked, not create conflict, and be someone that everyone could look out for because it matters. Because oftentimes where you're working, or else sometimes if you're on deployment, you're going to be living there. So you want to keep the peace. You want everyone to be okay with you, and this leads to people pleasing. It really comes down to having a heightened sense of responsibility for those around you and wanting to keep the peace and keep everyone happy. Now that you're in the civilian life, you might find it difficult to switch that off. You still want to be the yes man. You want to be the person that everyone can go to. And there's nothing wrong with that. That makes you a great employee. But we don't need to put our own needs before the needs of others anymore. And you're going to recognize that in civilian workplaces, that you're not going to feel like your coworkers are as loyal as they were in the military. And that's because they're not. They never went through the military culture, so they're not used to putting duty and other people in front of their own needs like you may be. So that's another reason we get frustrated with our civilian coworkers and, think that maybe they're lazy or they're not as loyal or hardworking as, you might have found people to be in the military. What you need to make sure is that you're not putting the needs of others before your own needs. You need to prioritize yourself. You need to stop seeking that external validation from others based on what you can provide them in the workplace. And I know that's really hard, and that sounds totally opposite of what you were doing in the military, or maybe even what you were doing in your job. It's important for us to remember that we're not under a contract anymore. You can leave your job if it's becoming toxic, or if you feel like you're having to say yes to way more than you can put on your plate. you can have that conversation with your boss or your other coworkers and say, hey, I'm not being the most productive I could be because I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed and I'm not sure how I can do all of this. Having that conversation could lead to, finding that appropriate balance and also maybe helping your coworkers step up and help you. You don't have to feel like you need to do everything anymore. You aren't stuck anymore. This isn't permission to do what you want at work. I'm not promoting people to be lazy or you shouldn't try to take on the bare minimum. Just take on what is practical for you. And you don't need to carry those bad habits out of the military with putting everyone else before you, putting the mission above everything before you. Now you have the choice. You have other options. And guess what? Your boss knows that you have other options and they find you valuable and they're not going to want to lose you. So you speaking up and expressing that, hey, you're overwhelmed, it's going to be something that they're going to want to help with and they're going to value your opinion. This is hard for veterans because we are hesitant to express our needs and we also don't like to ask for help. I mean, I've sat quiet so long in my job because I didn't want to bother anyone and really I needed help and it would have been more beneficial to myself and the company if I would have said, hey, I need more training or I need help with this instead of sitting back and not wanting to bother anyone. But that's hard for us because we don't like asking for help, but we really need to. And in order to do that, we need to become self-aware. We need to acknowledge that our own needs and our own self-care is a priority and we don't need to feel guilty about that because, again, we have that ingrained in us that putting anything above the mission is selfish, but it really isn't because by putting yourself first, you are putting the mission first, you are putting your work first, your income, you're putting your family first because none of that is going to work if you aren't your best self. I'd just like to take a second to acknowledge if you are a woman who served that this might even relate to you even more because I feel like mine was amplified, being a woman in the service, you feel like you have to prove so much more, so you're more willing to say yes to things or to have multiple roles, extra command activities, and, prove your worth just because we feel that need to as women. And carrying this outside to the workplace, it's going to be even harder for us because we're wanting to prove ourselves and we want to prove ourselves in our new role, especially coming out of the military and showing that we can make it. But that is the fastest way to get burnt out is by taking on too much. So as women, we really need to be honest with ourselves about what is appropriate amount of work we can do. We just need to find that balance and it's okay to speak up. It doesn't make you weak. It will show that you actually care and the squeaky wheel gets the oil. People don't know that you're struggling unless you say something to them. So that's why we need to speak up about it. In summary, we don't need to be people pleasers. We don't need to be yes men anymore. That's not going to help us outside of the military. And it's hard, okay? These are baby steps. Like all the things I talk about, we can take baby steps. A small baby step you could take is just expressing that you only want to check email a few times a day. Don't feel like you always have to be responsive on email. And if anyone confronts you about this, just say, hey, I'm more productive when I mute my email instead of constantly being distracted. Or another example, if you're a delivery driver and you get asked to put more things on your route or you're told you have to, just kind of challenge it and say, hey, this really wouldn't make sense for me to do this. Could we find a different way? And if you approach it, not in a confrontation way, but in a very serious way and make it seem like you're really putting the mission first because you are. And I think people will be at least receptive to you. I'm not saying it's going to work every time. Or even saying no to a meeting, saying I have a lot going on. I'm not going to be able to meet. I think it's best if I don't make this meeting. So you could try something like that and it's baby steps. Hey, I'm still working on this myself. And it's hard. I feel like I'm constantly backsliding or I'll get off a phone call and I'm like, why did I just say yes to that? Like, I absolutely don't have time for this. And that's just the people pleasing in me. And, I try to communicate via email first because that gives me a chance to slow down, really type out what I want to say or be able to express myself through words and put things into a better perspective. If you work like that, maybe just try to communicate with your boss or whoever through emails or text, because it's easy to be put on the spot. It's hard for us as people pleasers to be put on the spot, because our reaction is, yes, of course, we can do that, we can add that, but sometimes we just got to put our hand down and, not volunteer. Well, I hope this episode resonated with you, and if you have any questions or anything you'd like to add, maybe you've struggled with this yourself and have found better tips, I'd love to hear from you on what has helped you, and thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you on Sunday. We have a great episode of Vet Chats. It's going to be a good one, so I hope you can tune in, stop by, say hi, or catch the replay. All right, thanks. Bye.